And with that, let's now talk about the US-India relationship, as US climate envoy John Kerry is on Asia visit and India will be his next stop after the UAE. Kerry will be the second top Biden administration official to visit India in the last 1 month. During the visit, John Kerry will hold talks with Indian Environment Minister Prakash Javadekar. He is also expected to call on Prime Minister Narendra Modi. A spokesperson at the US Embassy in New Delhi has informed WION that Kerry will meet with representatives of the Indian government, private sector and non-governmental organizations. The spokesperson also added that India is a critical part of the solution to the climate crisis and that US sees India as an important partner on future clean energy research and development. Climate has been a key priority area for the new US administration under Joe Biden. On the first day of his office, President Biden had announced the US joining the Paris Climate Pact, from which former US President Trump had withdrawn. Kerry kicked off his trip last week from the United Arab Emirates. He is leading efforts to get countries to commit themselves to reduce greenhouse gas emissions to zero by about the middle of the century. The visit focuses on narrowing differences on climate change goals to slow global warming. India is the world's third biggest carbon emitter. Hence, Indian government is facing calls from the United States and Britain to commit to a net zero emissions target by the year 2050. The per capita emissions in India are way lower than that of the United States, European countries and even China, and it is concerned that binding itself to such a target could constrain the energy needs of its people. Yet, India has said it will not only stick to the Paris Accord to reduce its carbon footprint by 33 to 35% from its 2005 levels by 2030, but will likely exceed those goals as it ramps up use of renewable energy. India has its own ambitious International Solar Alliance, which aims to harness solar energy to fight climate change as well. Kerry took part in a climate dialogue for the Middle East and North Africa hosted by Abu Dhabi on April 4th. Special Presidential Envoy for Climate will also travel to Dhaka during the April trip. Experts believe that Bangladesh is especially vulnerable to climate change as it has large numbers of people living in areas barely above sea level and lacks infrastructure to protect them. The visit comes even as Joe Biden has invited 40 world leaders, including Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, for a leaders' summit on climate. The virtual summit will be held on April 22nd and 23rd. For more details, let's quickly go across to WION's principal diplomatic correspondent Siddhant Sipal, who's joining us live from New Delhi. Siddhant, just ahead of President Joe Biden's Leaders Summit on climate scheduled for April 22nd and 23rd, how crucial is John Kerry's visit to India?
Well, it's a very important visit by the top official from the Biden administration, as you pointed out, the second top official to visit New Delhi. And the focus will be how both Washington and New Delhi will be on the same page when it comes to dealing with the issue of climate change, an issue which, of course, is one of the top issues discussed at various multilateral forums and, of course, bilateral forums as well. But by and large, the visit coming ahead of the summit announced by the US President Joe Biden, in which 40 leaders have been called, but also ahead of the meeting that will take place in November, the COP26 meeting which will take place in Glasgow in UK. And the focus will be on how the world community can work together to make sure that the issue of climate change can be resolved. And India, of course, is a key stakeholder. We know that ahead of the visit, the US has termed India as a critical player when it comes to dealing with the climate change. And of course, India as a large economy, as a country which has huge emission, plays an important role. India has its own domestic goals as well to deal with climate change, but also India is working on the International Solar Alliance. It is expected, of course, that India is going to talk about the International Solar Alliance during the various meetings, whether it is with the Climate Minister Prakash Javadekar or whether it is with other ministers as well, because remember, he's on a 4-day India visit and he's also going to meet the Indian External Affairs Minister, the Petroleum Minister, other ministers as well. So by and large, he's going to meet the top officials here in New Delhi, right, and will try to, of course, make sure that both Washington and New Delhi are on the same page.
Right. Siddhant, John Kerry will skip Pakistan during this trip to Bangladesh, or rather his Asia tour, where he has included India. So much so Pakistan has not even been invited to the Biden Climate Summit. What explains this snub to Pakistan?
Well, so far there hasn't been any comment coming from White House or from the State Department as to why Pakistan hasn't been invited either for the summit which is going to take place later this month, or either, of course, this very important visit of the top climate envoy of Washington. He is also going to Dhaka. In fact, when it comes to the virtual summit, India, Bhutan and Bangladesh have been invited. Pakistan hasn't been invited. We know that there has been strong reaction in the Pakistani media. In fact, the Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan over the weekend took to Twitter and talked about his government's role when it comes to dealing with the climate change, the billion tree tsunami which he has been talking about how he has been taking constructive measures. But perhaps the administration in Washington sees India more important player when it comes to dealing with the climate change as a huge economy, and also Bangladesh and Bhutan for their own climate measures in dealing with the crisis. We know Bhutan has been lauded many times when it comes to dealing with the climate change, and perhaps it sees Pakistan as a country on which it perhaps deals on issues like Afghanistan or on the issue of cross-border terrorism.
Right. Thank you so much, Siddhant Sibal, for bringing us all those inputs. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.